Not only do we have the NHL draft coming up, but NHL free agency kicks off 1 week from tomorrow. Barry Trotz said the Preds won't be big swingers, but that doesn't mean there's not valuable players out there that could be a perfect fit in Smashville. We'll look at 6 guys we think fit the bill today on the Locked On Predators podcast.
Your Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making the Locked On Predators podcast your first listen of the day. Every single day, we are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We appreciate you making us your first listen of the day, and we appreciate all of you loyal Locked On Pred heads, the everydayers who tune into every single show. We love all the support you guys give us, and we love you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Nick Morgan. I'm a writer at Penalty Box Radio, and I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Ann Kimmel. I'm a writer at InsideThePreds.com.
Also want to mention today's show is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. And busy week for the Nashville Predators coming up. Not only do we have the NHL draft next week, there's still trade rumors flying around left and right. And, you seem to kind of forget that free agency is also right around the corner.
I think all of us are going to need a nap, and we're not going to get one because Nashville is set up to do moves if they so desire. So I think the Nashville Predators fan base needs to just buckle up because these next couple of weeks, this next month, literally anything can happen, whether it's trade during the draft or, like we're talking about today, free agency.
Yeah, between now and like July 5th, the Nashville Predators are going to be a team to watch in the NHL. I think so. We've talked about the draft. We still have some more draft content coming out for you next week with Eric Dene talking about some sleepers that the Nashville Predators could draft in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and 6th, and 7th rounds. Some late round picks that we haven't talked about yet. We have also got our official draft preview coming up, and exciting thing to say, Ann, you and I are going to be at the draft next week.
We are. Look out, Bridgestone Arena, because Locked On Predators is coming to the draft.
Yeah, so we got some good content coming up there. We're going to have a lot of inside information and interviews and all that good stuff. So make sure you guys are tuned into Locked On Predators over the next couple of weeks because we got a lot of good stuff for you. Let's stick with the free agency, though. This is something that a lot of people, I think, have kind of forgotten about a little bit, Ann, because it is just 2 days after the draft wraps up that NHL free agency begins. We've heard from Barry Trotz say this in the past. He says he doesn't anticipate the Preds being big players in free agency. He said the class was somewhat thin, and he was going to let other GMs fight for some of the top guys on the market. So if you were anticipating either a Patrick Kane surprise appearance at Nashville or a Dmitry Orlov anchored blue line or Tyler Bertuzzi up front, probably not going to happen.
Yeah, probably no. And actually, I was really relieved when Barry Trotz said this. You know, the Nashville Predators are in such a unique position. All of a sudden, they have this cap space. All of a sudden, you know, there is potential for them to make a big move. But Barry Trotz is very much about just because you could make a big move doesn't mean you need to go out and do it. And I think that's great dating advice. I think that is great GM advice. Yeah. You know, just because somebody's available doesn't mean it's the right fit. And I think Barry Trotz is going to be extremely picky when it comes to looking at free agents. And I like that. Yeah. The Nashville Predators don't have to do anything right now. So let's not jump in where we don't need to.
Although I will say the thought of Tyler Bertuzzi in this new Preds offense is a lot of fun to think about. That would be fun. So if the Preds aren't going to swing for any of the top guys, that doesn't mean they're going to stand pat at free agency either. There are a lot of good, valuable players, like guys under the radar. They're not necessarily the superstars, but they're sort of that next tier or the tier after the next tier. Guys that not only could provide a spark to Nashville, but really fit in to what the team is trying to do, both in terms of a strategy standpoint on the ice and fit kind of what they're trying to do with the roster, transition to some of the younger people, guys that can elevate some younger players and maybe bridge the gap towards that next era of Predators players. So that is who we're going to be looking at today. A few under the radar targets for the Nashville Predators. And start us off. Who's somebody that you think the Predators might target in free agency?
Here's one that I would be very intrigued for the Nashville Predators to maybe pursue, and that is Evan Rodrigues, 29-year-old. I love this guy. He's undrafted and has worked his way into the league and really became a valuable piece last season for Colorado. I think everybody kind of viewed him as like, hey, this is like a middle six guy, but he definitely had some time in the top six and earned his way into being a valuable playmaker for them. 69 games played, 16 goals, 23 assists, great two-way player, which I think is something to remember if we're talking about bringing in a free agent. He also great on the power play, can't hurt. Here's what I love about him. This is a guy who shoots the puck. And how many times have you and I talked about watching a Nashville Predators game and yelling at the television, shoot at the puck? I mean, I remember you.
I think we have a whole YouTube short that got like 3,000 views. That was just screaming at Mikael Granlund.
Shoot the puck. Like the angst could be over if you bring in a player like Evan Rodrigues. This is a guy who puts pucks on net. The other thing that I really like about him is the fact that he is a two-way player. So you think if you could bring him in and put him on a line with somebody with a little bit less experience, he maybe can cover up some youth errors as some of these younger players are adjusting. So for me, this is a really intriguing person that's available as a UFA.
And he's versatile too. Like that's, I think, another plus to his game. He's somebody that can play center. You can move him out on the wing. I love the addition that he brought to the Colorado Avalanche last year. You know, when they lost some guys both to free agency and injury, you know, Rodrigues was a guy that kind of stepped up, and you know, he wasn't providing like the secondary story Nazem Kadri provided the year before. But, you know, almost 40 points, that's pretty good for a guy that you kind of had penciled in as a third line guy. He's somebody that can, I think, move up and down the lineup. As you mentioned, I think his two-way game, very underrated. And I think the big thing that you mentioned, and this is something that I have attached to another player we're going to talk about here in a little bit too, is that he is the kind of guy that whose responsible play can complement somebody like Luke Evangelista or Phil Tomasino, guys that have a real nose for the net, but maybe are lacking in some other areas, you know, like, you know, a little bit, you know, they're still working on their defensive game. This is somebody that you could maybe pair with one of those younger players, kind of have him be the anchor of that line and let those other two really kind of push play a little bit.
Yeah, I love that about him. I think that is really where so much of his value comes in. Not to say that offensively he isn't valuable. I mean, wouldn't we have killed to have a middle six guy with 16 goals and 23 assists last season? The answer, my friends, is yes. Yes, we would have.
I think we would have loved to have any player.
Anybody
with
anywhere in the lineup.
Goals and 40 points.
But can you know, imagine somebody who can come in and be someone who helps develop a Phil Tomasino, a Luke Evangelista, who kind of covers that and helps them grow while still contributing offensively. Y'all, this could be a really interesting piece for the Nashville Predators.
Well, speaking of that, let's talk to somebody that I also think fits that bill. How about Gustav Nyquist?
Let's talk about the Swede.
This is, as a Red Wings enthusiast.
There you go.
This is somebody who I think has been very underappreciated. The main thing that stands out about his game, that's always stood out about his game, is his speed.
Come on.
Unbelievable breakaway speed. Somebody that I think whose top speed rivals some of the top players in the NHL. He's just never quite been that all-star. So, you've never really seen him go toe-to-toe with anybody. But he has the potential to break away from opposing defenses, to really put the pressure on, drive pucks deep. Defenses kind of, are forced to chase him. That's always been his kind of game. And that's somebody, and truthfully, that the Predators don't really have. I mean, a lot of their top guys, Forsberg, Duchesne, a little bit more creative power, power forward type guys. Adding somebody like Nyquist, who can really get the puck on his, on the front foot and push pace a little bit, that's a guy the Predators are sorely lacking.
Yes, and that's somebody that Andrew Brunette is going to be looking for. Barry Trotz, Andrew Brunette talking about, look, we want to play on our front foot. We don't want to play on our back foot. We want to move. We want to up the pace of the game. Barry Trotz talked about this team has to get faster. And I think if you bring in someone like Nyquist, you're looking at someone who can not only play the game faster himself, but you know what? Bring a line along with you. Up the pace of the game with your line mates. And I think there's a tremendous amount of value in that. That's the direction the Predators are going. If you're going to put him on a team with some young guys, let's get a guy out there who's going to set a pace like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a lot of people because, Nyquist has had a little bit of injury concerns over the past few years, missed a lot of time last year, but came back at the very end of last season, 5 points in just 3 games with the Minnesota Wild in his return from injury. Then when in the playoffs, 5 assists in 6 games. So you're seeing that level of play still there from Nyquist. And and the other thing is he's 33 years old. So there's not going to be a lot of teams offering him more than, a 1 or 2 year deal. So not only does the player fit, but also you look, and this is a guy whose contract, you can sign him to a contract that is, basically zero risk for the Nashville Predators, just 1, maybe 2 years max. And then all of a sudden you're bridging the gap to when some other young prospects on that roster can take over.
Yes, timing is everything. And this is a player, like you said, a lot of people may not look at him and think this is a guy that's going to be what we need long-term. Nashville Predators may not need him long-term, but this is a player they could use right now. Next couple seasons, this could be a great signing.
Yeah. A couple more free agents to talk about, including one who may be a top player in this free agent class, but is still kind of falling under the radar. Plus, Ann and I both have some defensemen to talk about, some guys that really hit on what Barry Trotz wants to do with that blue line. So we'll talk about them in just a second. But first, want to mention today's episode is brought to you by what I think are some of the comfiest shorts I've ever worn, and that's Bird Dogs. I just went to Chicago last weekend, first trip with my new girlfriend. That's a whole thing for a different ad read for another day. But I brought both pairs of Bird Dogs that I own with me, and I am glad I did. Not only do they look great, they have the khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, which give me a sculpted look, and they look like khaki, but they also feel great. Their cloud knit fabric is a lot thinner and it stretches more, unlike those traditional weird bulky khaki fabrics. And they're basically like Lululemons, but they look nice. So you can wear them all day in any situation. Their anti-stink sweat wicking fabric keeps you cool and dry all day long. So I can wear them, when I'm out at a nice dinner. I can wear them when I'm walking out around town, whether I'm at the golf course. There's just no limit to where you can wear them. We want you to try it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. Try it yourself. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL, get a pair of Bird Dogs, and you'll get a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. Again, birddogs.com/LockedOnNHL for a free Yeti-style tumbler that go along with your purchase of what I think are the comfiest pants I've ever worn. Trust me, you will not want to take off your Bird Dogs I promise you. All right, Dan, let's talk about more free agents, shall we? Let's talk about a guy who I think could be contender for, one of the bigger deals on the free agent market this year, but somebody that I don't think a lot of people are really talking about as a top guy in the class. That's J.T.Compher from the Colorado Avalanche, a teammate of Evan Rodrigues. If the Predators are going for versatility, this is a guy who gives you a lot of versatility in that Predators lineup.
Yeah, I really like this. I like this idea of J.T.Compher. He was one of my finalists in my list for sure. And I agree with you. This is a guy, first of all, 82 game season. He's in great shape. He is playing well. He had 17 goals, 35 assists, 52 points. He's a good two-way player as well. And that's something, again, we talk about with a young Nashville Predators team. Hey, let's bring in somebody who's pretty solid on both sides of the ice. And so J.T.Compher, I think, is an interesting idea. He also is only 28, 29. What is he? 28. 28. So we're talking, you could get a contract with term with him and have him be kind of a good fundamental piece for the Predators moving forward. This is one I think would be worth conversations.
Yeah, and you look at him, he's got some scoring bump. He just had his career best scoring year, 17 goals, 35 assists, 52 points in 82 games for the Avs. He has kind of stepped up. He took advantage of the Avalanche, those same issues we talked about with Evan Rodrigues, a lot of roster turnover and injuries and whatnot. He stepped up into an elevated role, made the most of it. We talk about his versatility, very good two-way player. I would say has a, decent reputation as one of the better defensive forwards in the league. Not the top tier, but a very, very good defensive forward. He was the Avs' top penalty killer, a frequent contributor to the power play. And also, he's fast. His forechecking is very aggressive. We saw it firsthand in the playoff series last year against the Preds and some of the games that the Avs played this year. Compher was a guy that was causing a lot of headaches for the Preds, caused them to be back on their heels a little bit. It's exactly kind of the guy that Andrew Brunette, I think, would really want. He plays with that style Brunette wants to instill on the team. The only question is, a young guy like that coming off his career scoring, what's the contract going to be?
Yeah. And that, I think, is where you have to be careful with some of these free agents, because this would be a great land for the Nashville Predators. I don't think there's a tremendous amount of downside on the ice with J.T.Compher for the Nashville Predators. And you've touched on the reasons why. But then you come back to how much money do you want to invest and how much term do you want to include in a contract where the Predators are right now? And that's where I think this gets tricky for the Nashville Predators. Sure, they've got some cap space, but do they believe that the young guys that they have right now that they're developing are going to grow in the next 2 or 3 seasons into being what you would then be paying J.T.Compher for? And I think that's where you have to kind of be careful with some of these players. Again, I think he would be a great fit. I don't know. What kind of contract do you think he would need from Nashville?
Well, his former teammate at Michigan just signed a 5-year, $5.5 million AAV contract. That was Andrew Kopp, who signed in Michigan. They're kind of similar-ish players. So I'm sure, he's going to look at it and be like, hey, I would like a 5-year deal worth about that much. I just had a career year. I'm a versatile player. I can do a lot of different things very well and add some depth in the middle of your lineup. I think maybe the one thing working against him this year is this year's free agent class is a lot deeper and a lot better than it was a year ago. We're talking about a guy who, maybe a year ago would have been, 6th, 7th, 8th best free agent available on the market. This is a guy who's, maybe not even in the top 15 in terms of players available right now. So maybe because, there's people going to be more interested in throwing money elsewhere. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
his term is a little bit less. You know, and I think to your point, Ann, yeah, you don't want to pack up the Predators lineup with too many long-term contracts right now.
Right.
But, you know, if it's the right player, if it's a player that you envision being here a long time, maybe that's when it is worth it. You know, maybe that is, you know, if you envision J.T.Compher not only, you know, anchoring your, you know, second, third line this year, but you look like 4 years down the road and still look at him and be like, okay, I still think J.T.Compher is going to be playing at that level in 4 years. Maybe you're a little bit more aggressive in trying to make this happen.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I think it's so hard right now because I don't know that the Predators know what they have yet. We've gotten some great glimpses, but I don't know that we know for sure what we have yet. So I think it also makes this whole free agency time a little bit tricky for the Predators.
Yeah, interesting time. Speaking of tricky, Ann, would we like to talk about defense?
Yes. Oh my gosh. We were talking about this before we recorded. I'm having such stress over the defense. And so, of course, when we're talking about free agents, I was like, okay, let's look for a defenseman. Can we just look for a defenseman? And I think Ryan Graves might be an interesting piece for the Nashville Predators.
I agree.
I like this guy. So first of all, he's a biggin, and you know we like our biggins. 6'5", 220. There's a lot of Ryan Graves to love, which is fantastic. But here's what I like about him. I think he's very good defensively. Obviously, he's very physical. He's great at separating a guy from the puck. He's good at doing what you need him to do. But he also has an offensive upside. He takes a lot of shots. Again, I go back to let's not listen to Nick wail about shoot the puck next season. We can fix this. But what I like about him is his shots are not just YOLO, nothing's opening up, so I'm just going to try to shoot this through traffic and it's going to get blocked. He's very good at finding those little windows, the little pockets, and getting the puck on net. And I think if you have somebody like that, it opens up some things offensively for the Nashville Predators in front of the net as well. So, you know, he would have been second, you know, if his stats from last season, had he been on the Predators roster, he would have been second in shots taken by a defenseman, of course, behind Roman Josi. This is a guy who's going to get pucks on net. Also good at exiting the zone. And can I get an amen and a hallelujah for that one, friends? Because we've seen too many of those go awry.
Yeah. It's funny, as you know, whenever he's on the ice, his team always usually gets more chances than they give up, which is impressive because he has started, I think, like, you know, more than half of his zone starts have been in the defensive zone or the neutral zone. So, like, this is a guy who is, you know, has the reputation as a defensive-minded defenseman. You know, you ask a lot of people in New Jersey and they said, yeah, he's one of their better defensive defensemen. But the thing I like about him when you mention his size and physicality is he's not a pylon either. He can skate. He is a very good skater. He can go win a puck in a corner, win a good puck battle, and then either transition or make a really good pass to a skater out of the zone. Like, he is like, you know, that's ideal for, like, you know, maybe the second pair on your lineup is you want a guy, you don't need to be another Roman Josi and score like, you know, 60, 70 points or anything like that. You just got to be able to do enough, you know, and that's what Ryan Graves does. He can do enough of the offense while still being really good defensively. And I think, you know, I know the Nashville Predators have, you know, 5 of their top 6 defensemen re-signed. Their 6th is Alexander Carrier, who's a restricted free agent right now. But I just look at what that core did next year, and I look at somebody like Ryan Graves. I look at the pipeline, which is kind of thin behind the defense right now, and I think, yeah, I mean, you might want to, like, you know, it's gonna take a big commitment, like it's gonna take a big contract. But is that one that's worth taking, knowing how bad your defense was last year?
Yeah. And I agree with you. You're going to have to weigh out the fact that he is going to want a long contract, but I think he replaces some of the things that the Predators lost when they traded Matthias Ekholm. Might be worth it.
Yeah. And somebody that I think complements somebody like, you know, like, let's say Tyson Barrie on the other side very, very well. The other name I'll just throw in real quick defense is Scott Mayfield. Just because similar build. He's a 6'5", 220 guy, which is pretty much the same as Ryan Graves.
Come on.
Underrated skater and a decent scoring pop. Like, he had 23 points last season for the Islanders. I think maybe a little bit less of an upside than Ryan Graves. Plus, there's a lot of people that said in New York that he's prone to making a little bit more mistakes. But that's another kind of plan B option. Plus, his best years in New York, the years where he kind of went from just kind of that extra guy to a reliable top 4 guy, Barry Trotz was his head coach. So there's some familiarity there. So there's another option to keep in mind. And more offense to get to, including another guy you and I both think would be a perfect complement to some of these young players, and a absolute YOLO pick for a free agent pickup if you're the Nashville Predators. We'll talk about both in just one second.
First, I want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Game Time. Look, buying tickets to your favorite sporting event should not be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. They have killer deals on last-minute tickets, and they have a best price guarantee, so you can stop stressing over the tickets. Start getting hyped for the fun you're going to have. Tonight, hey, it's a great night for baseball. If you're looking for a fun evening activity, go to the Game Time app and you can grab tickets for tonight's Nashville Sounds game for as low as $13. Got a lot of NASCAR action coming to town this weekend. Game Time has tickets for all the races you want to be at. Game Time also provides you with a view of your seats so you know exactly what you're buying. And the tickets are sent right to your phone, so there's no digging through your email to get what you need. 2 taps, you're all set. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
All right, and let's talk some more forwards, including a guy both you and I think would absolutely be a perfect fit for this Preds lineup in the short term.
Yeah, so here is a guy that I am just this side of giddy about, and that is Tomas Tatar. First of all, fabulous name. Can we just talk about how fun that name is? It makes us sound fancy. But I like this guy. 82
and another former Red Wing.
And I know that warms your heart.
Yes.
82 games played, 20 goals, 28 assists, 48 points. Again, I come back to 20 goals scored. Can I get a holla and a hallelujah? And wouldn't the Predators have liked that?
Yes.
So this is a solid two-way player. He's a great middle 6 kind of guy. Here is kind of the hitch and the giddy up that a lot of people feel when they look at his season is not great in the postseason, friends. He did not have a great postseason. Here's the upside for the Nashville Predators. Who even knows if we'll make the postseason?
Very valid point. Yes.
So let's just see what he can do. But this is a great middle 6 guy. He's somebody that really plays a great two-way game. We've talked about how important that is as you're developing these younger players. Give him Tommy Novak. Give him Luke Evangelista. He is great at playmaking, but also really solid defensively, so he can cover up any, nip slips on the ice that may or may not happen. And this is somebody that you could do a nice deal with.
Yes.
I think 32 years old. I don't think this is a guy looking for a 5-6 year deal. This is a really great bridge player that may bring to Nashville exactly what they need.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you there. I think it's, you look at the deal and there's, beyond this year, he had a nice rebound year, but his last couple of years before this were a little bit disappointing by standards. So you're going to get, him maybe at a value option, like maybe just a 1-year deal to try to prove it. But I think the biggest thing, Ann, is his two-way game. We talked about that, even back in his Detroit years, there was a lot of people that talked about, his depth scoring, his scoring upside. Not a lot of people, talk about him being just a really good two-way player. You look at the stats and it was wild. Just, I think it was like the Devils outscored opponents like 63-11 when Thomas Tatar was on the ice this past season. It was something absolutely
obnoxious.
It was something absolutely wild like that. And that's kind of, like that screams somebody who's going to get, possession of the puck, somebody who's going to maintain possession, and somebody who's going to be very responsible at going and getting the puck back, defending the play, and forcing a turnover or something like that. That's somebody that you can plug in next to Luke Evangelista or Tomasino. We talked about it when we talked about Evan Rodrigues, somebody that, can kind of cover up the shortcomings of those younger guys while still giving them valuable time to grow.
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting pick and a little bit shorter term. Again, great bridge guy for the Nashville Predators. I would be 100% here for this signing.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I throw out, just to end the video, Anne, an absolutely wild card, an absolute YOLO pick?
I love YOLO picks, 100%.
All right, so the Nashville Predators, they want younger forwards.
Mm-hmm.
They want some value guys.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe take some swings at a boom or bust player.
Yeah.
How about Jonathan Drouin?
Elaborate.
Now here's the thing. There's a lot of people in the NHL that are hoping their team does not touch Jonathan Drouin with a 10-foot pole. His past couple years, let's just scratch that. His entire tenure with the Montreal Canadiens has been an unmitigated disaster from the get-go, including last year. He was a healthy scratch for the Canadiens opener. He was benched for what we understand to be disciplinary reasons for, a game or two down the stretch. Has not had a good tenure. But here's the thing. Well, we should also throw in he scored just 2 goals last year, which, kind of sucks. But watch him actually play.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a player that's like, the Predators could use a guy like that. When he's in the groove, he is super creative. You see the creativity that made him one of the NHL's top prospects about 10 years ago. He can create space for himself. He can make all these, acrobatic passes. Like he had this beautiful no-look pass last year to set up Brendan Gallagher for a good goal. We talk about, such a disappointing year for him last year. He still had 27 assists, which would have been the 3rd most on the Nashville Predators. And here's my question. There's going to be a lot of teams that don't touch this guy. A lot of teams that's like, nope, this is a character, issue. We don't want him. We want nothing to do with him. He's a bust. He's whatever. Give him 1 year. Give him 1 year, $1 million. Give him a prove-it year that costs you nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Put him next to Philip Forsberg. Put him next to Matt Duchene. Hell, put him next to some hungry young players like Cody Glass, like Tommy Novak, like Luke Evangelista. All of these creative players that are really striving to find the net. Tell me you don't think maybe some of that creativity comes back. Tell me you don't think some of that enthusiasm for playing the game of hockey again comes back a little bit. And if it doesn't work, oh well, you sign him for 1 year. Who cares? But if it does work and you can get Jonathan Drouin to refine some of that magic he had just a couple of years ago, boy, that's a big boom pick right there.
You really did go YOLO on that one.
I did go YOLO on that one.
But here's where I think you have a really valid point. Through this whole podcast, we're talking about what can a player bring to the Nashville Predators where the Predators are. But I also think where the Predators are might be a really great environment for a player coming in. This might be that situation, a fresh place to play. Lots of young energy. Look, the Nashville Predators may not make the playoffs, but it is not going to be because that team isn't trying. You are talking about hungry young players. You are talking about veterans who want to get back and prove it. And maybe that is an environment where a player like this refines their game. So, and like you said, if you could sign him for a 1 year, prove it, what does that hurt the Nashville Predators?
Yeah. Or if you sign him to a 1 year, prove it, and he kicks ass and starts, scoring all these goals again and refines his form from a few years ago, all of a sudden your Predators are out of the playoffs. You got a trade piece.
Trade him.
Yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of. I think there's a if you're gonna take like a high end swing at a guy.
If you're going to just YOLO it.
Yeah. If you're going to YOLO someone, why not YOLO somebody like Jonathan Drouin? Just see what happens.
Yeah. I you know what? You may be onto something with this.
Yeah. Let us know what you guys think. Is there a free agent we mentioned that you would absolutely love to see in a Predators uniform? Or is there somebody we didn't mention? Maybe somebody under the radar that you think the Predators could take a swing at that would fit in perfectly with this team. We would love to hear your guys' opinion on this. And where can people find your work?
You can find my work online at InsideThePreds.com. You can find me on Twitter at ANK_Mama on Ice.
You can find me at penaltyboxradio.com. Follow me on Twitter at _NSMorgan. That's going to do it for this week's edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Next week is draft week. We have a whole bunch of special coverage coming up. So stay tuned for that and keep making us your first listen of the day. We'll see you then.